Hello everybody, welcome to Greg's Vintage Workshop, where I'm restoring history one piece at a time. Tonight we're going to be looking at part 2 of the Emerson CF255. In part 1 we kind of took a look at the cabinet and a general just overall viewing of the radio components and how it was laid out and what a tiny radio it is. Tonight in part 2 we'll delve into it much deeper. The first thing I'm going to look at is going to be the resistance line cord, which was something I've never seen before, so that was interesting, and we'll have to deal with that. We won't be using a resistance line cord again, obviously. I think they were fondly known as curtain burners. The other thing we're going to look at is the detector coil and the antenna coils. We're going to check those out, and I don't want to spoil it, but I do wind up having to use my coil winder, so that's part of this particular part 2 video as well. And then I get into replacing the caps and the resistors, and we'll see where we go from there. I'm not sure how much more I'm going to be able to put on this particular video because I don't want it to be too long, as I stated before. So let's go ahead and get started and see where we wind up. So one of the more interesting things I wanted to show you guys, because this is the first time I've seen it, when you look at the schematic here and you look at the line cord, this box here is telling you this is contained, this line cord is contained. You can see we actually have resistor built into this line cord. It's called a resistance line cord. I don't know if I get this close enough for you to see it, but let me point it out. You can see there's fine wire twisted around this asbestos core. This is the resistor. This is the resistance wire. If we look in this end of the line cord, here it is here, tied in to this terminal along with the black wire. And then they have the red wire on the opposite terminal, the negative. Now I do notice that this cord has 3 different wires from this section. And so when you look at the description for it, it says resistance line cord with pilot light section. So part of this is for the pilot light, I believe, and part of it is for the rest. The 32, 32 L7 and the 12B8 for the heater. That's what I'm thinking anyway. Now I've done a preliminary check, just going from the coil here to up here, and I came up with 254 ohms. So I got to do a little bit more research on this and figure out, because obviously I'm not using this cord, and obviously this cord, I wouldn't like the idea of my cord getting hot because it's basically a big resistor. So I'll probably wind up putting power resistor to get to the right voltages. But I wanted to show you that because that's very unique, and I have this first time I've dealt with it. So, alright, I wanted to show you guys that. Okay everybody, here's where we're at right now. I took this and I went ahead and I pulled the tuning condenser off of it. I pulled the plate that had the dial indicator and the dial string off. I put both of those things in my ultrasonic cleaner. I'll show you those in a little bit because they are done. Now the ultrasonic cleaner did remove the gold from the face plate piece for the dial indicator, so I'm going to have to repaint that, but that's not a big deal. As you can see, it gave me better access to the detector coil, and it's going to need to be re-waxed. As you can see, the wax is just completely breaking off of it. And then this is the antenna coil, and it's a mess as well, as you can see. So I'm going to have to get those out and re-wax them, but we are going to test them first. So let's go ahead, see if I can get this set back up or don't fall over and where you guys can see it. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. Okay, there we go, maybe. Alright, now let me get my meter lead set up and I'll show you what we're checking. I gotta get a good ground here, and I'm hoping that this is gonna be a decent enough ground here that we can use it. So get that set up. Okay. So on this antenna coil, and you have to excuse me because my schematic got cut off. This is the antenna coil right here. And between this section here, we have the C5, and it goes out to the antenna wire, to the antenna, and then it also comes down here to the volume control. Okay, so that's the one coil. And actually I'm telling you that a little bit backwards. It does come down here. That's the one terminal we're going to check, and then the other one goes to ground. So we're going to be coming between this terminal here and ground. And then the opposite side will be coming from this terminal here to ground. And as you can see, I've already checked these. So I needed to know right away if I had open coils, considering how bad they look. But let's go ahead and look. So I got my ground. This is that C5 mica capacitor that I pointed to in the schematic right here. And C5 is a 0.00055 MF mica capacitor. So we're going to go from the point before the capacitor. Get my meter uncovered so you guys can see it. So that point before that capacitor should be right here. And we have 100 ohms. Okay. So to the other side of that coil, we will go from ground to the terminal way down inside there. You can barely see it. Right here should be it. There we go. We're 145.3 ohms on that. So as ratty as this antenna coil looks, it's not open. So that's a really good deal. Now for me to get it out of there to re-wax it, it needs to be re-waxed to protect the wires so it doesn't go open. We have a rivet here that I'm going to have to drill out and then replace it with a screw. Turn my meter off, it's beeping at me. So I'll do that, and I'll have to desolder all that. And then once I get all desoldered, I'll dip it. I'll show you guys that when I do it. So now let's go look at the detector coil. Let me get this thing set up so it doesn't fall over. So in this case, we got a couple things we got to check. We got this side of the coil that's going to the tuning condenser and then down to ground. And then we also have this little coil here that we're going to check. And then this side that we're going to check. This side is coming over here, terminal 3, play the 12 B8 GT tube, and this one over here is actually coming over to the C13 electrolytic. So I pre-marked these with some color so I could find them easier when I did this with you guys. So first thing we're going to check is going to be this section of it right here, which are the two blue dots that I have marked on here previously, which should be this one and this one. 78.7 ohms. Next one we're going to go to will be the two oranges, which will be the littler coil. So on this one, we're actually going to ground. We're going to go to this ground right here, which is the same one that our black dots shared, and they go up by the C8. So this is the C8 cap right here, and we will see what we get here. Hey, Moose knocked my pin on the floor and he's chasing it now. So what were we going? I'm sorry, he got me sidetracked. Orange to orange, here we go, okay. Ground to here. And we got 0.3, 0.4 ohm. So she's not open. So let me, which as you can see it is representing a very small coil. So, and then that leaves the black dot, which is this one. Hopefully I got you guys on camera. Is this coil here. It goes down to the tuning condenser and the ground. So on the black one, we can go back down to our ground piece. So we're going from here to here. And we're 4.4 ohms. So as crummy as these coils look, they're not open. So I'm pretty happy about that. So again, on this one I've got to do some desoldering. This one's more just desoldering. I got to do that anyway, really, to get to this cap right here. So I think what I'm planning on doing is I'm going to desolder these two coils, clean them up, be very careful with them so I don't open them, and then re-wax them. Then I'm going to go ahead and change the capacitors and check the few resistors that are in there. There's not many in there, and I can see in the light there is a hole in that speaker right there that we'll have to fix, and a crack up here. And yes, I haven't put my finger in it yet, and I'm probably going to before it's done. So I will change this stuff and wax these coils, and then we will come back. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys the tuning condenser after I got it all done. Now the only thing I don't have back in it yet is I still got to clean my mica plates off. The actual mic is out. This is all clean because this was in the ultrasonic cleaner. But it's all clean and lubricated, and it's working really nice. I checked it, no shorts. So that's that. And then this is the plate that was on the front. As you can see, all the gold paint came off in the ultrasonic cleaner, but it's nice and clean and lubricated. This has got a little bit of wear in it, but I didn't really see a good way of fixing that, so I think we're just going to keep it lubricated and let it be. I mean, it's lasted this long. No more I'll probably use it. It should be fine. But yeah, I got to repaint that. So that's those pieces. Now I will move on to the two coils, the antenna coil and the detector coil, and get those out and get them re-waxed. Okay, so I got the detector coil out. I've cleaned the terminals. I'm going to hit them with a little bit of alcohol too, but what I want to do is get this protected right away. As you can see, we got some pretty fine wires exposed by that being off. So what I'm going to do to start with is I'm going to take my heat gun and I'm going to melt this existing wax and let it go where it wants to go before I heat up new wax to put on it. So let me get that set up here and we'll do it. All right. You see that the old wax just kind of melting, and that's fine. That's what we want. Alright, that's actually good enough. Now I will go heat some wax of my own, and we will dip it in my wax. What I do is I have wax, and I'll show you this here in a second. I'm not going to show you the whole process, but I'll show you what I do. Let me set this down. Okay, we'll set that here. I have wax, beeswax, in a little canning jar because it heats well in the microwave, and it's deep enough that I can submerge this. So what I'll do is I'll submerge it from this opposite end like this, and then I'll scrape the wax off of this, but that way everything will be coated in wax inside and out. So I mean, already just by doing that we have helped these wires a little bit. That one there is still free. I don't want to touch it because I don't want to break it. But once we start getting some wax on it, it should hold it in place. So let me get that done. Alright, I wasn't going to show you this process, but I decided to go ahead and do that. So this is the fully melted beeswax, and it is very, very hot. Very hot. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my we're going to go almost to the tippy top there. We'll pull it out. You can see it'll start setting up here. If I blew on it, it would set up even faster. Let me blow on it a little bit. Almost dropped it. Alright, so we go back in and we come back out. What we're trying to do is build layers. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to keep going in and out. I'll bring you back when I get it done. Alrighty guys, so here's the detector coil, and all coated with wax, and it turned out pretty good. I retested it and we're good to go. Here is the antenna coil. I tested it when I took it out, and it tested good. I waxed it, and now it's got an open and a couple of short. So not quite sure why it happened, but it's probably a godsend anyway, because I was looking at the chassis, and this sets right behind the rectifier tube, and even though there's a shield in there, it is probably going to get hot enough that it would melt this wax. So I'm going to go ahead and take this wax off, see if I can find my errors, fix them, and then we'll coat it with something else. I'm thinking maybe the black liquid electrical tape. Alright, let me get that done. I'll bring you back. Okay, let me show you what I got going on. As you can see, I've got my coil winder in camera right now. Here is the antenna coil, and this was the coil that was open. I had to take it off. I have created a couple of forms out of rubber bands in order to support the new coil that I'm going to wind onto it. And so the first thing I had to do was count the coils. Well, I couldn't count the coils because they were all broken. But what I could do was keep all the wire, which I did, and measure it all. And when I measured it, it came out to 62 feet. So how am I going to get 62 feet on this coil? Well, it's number 38 gauge. I've got 38 gauge here loaded on my coil winder. And I measured and calculated the circumference of this empty spool. And what that comes down to is 154 turns. So I'm getting ready to load 154 turns of 38 gauge wire on this spool, and then that should be the right amount. And then I'll sever it, and then I'll chuck the coil up in here instead and place this spool on this end, and all I have to do is then just wind it on there and guide it. I don't have to worry about how long it is. So that's the process. I'm going to show you this. So get my coil here where it'll turn. I got some paper on the side here. I guess I need to get that off or it's going to bind it. So let's do that. Okay. Yeah, we should be good. You see, when you got a spool winder, it goes fairly quickly. So there's 154 right there. So that should be 62 feet. So I'll change this out, and then we'll get the coil on there. Okay. Got the coil back on there now. Everything's strung up. My dogs are carrying on upstairs, but we're going to see if we can get this on here now. A little bit of tension on there. It. I think my form is a little wider than what it was, therefore it's not as thick as the other one was diameter wise. Plus I think that the cloth coating that was on the other one gave it a little bit more thickness. But there we are. Now let me finish this up. The plan is at this point, once I get this off of here, I'm going to put a dab of hot glue on it just to hold it momentarily. And then I will put some epoxy on it on the sides once I get the forms off. Well, I wound up having to redo the antenna coil. This is it here. It's not completely finished yet. I still have to solder my two leads from this new coil on here. What had happened was, as you saw in that last video, I had the rubber bands on there, and what happened was when I took the rubber bands off, the sides of the coil just collapsed, and everything was loose and collapsed outward. So I wound up unwinding the coil the same way that I showed you that I put the wire from the original spool onto the secondary spool. I rewound the secondary spool off of the coil so I didn't have to waste the wire. And then I wound up making two cardboard forms that will stay on this antenna coil. So what I did was I cut them to size, got them on there, put them on with some hot glue, and then I wound the coil. And then after I wound the coil, I went around the whole thing with epoxy. That's why it's shiny, because it's epoxy. And that's the way it's going to stay. Now, this is a little bit bigger than it needs to be. I'll probably take this over to my grinder and clean this up very carefully so I don't hit my wiring. May not either. I may just do it with a little bit of my hand file. That's probably what I'll do, is a hand file. And then once I get that all done, I'm going to coat the whole thing with black acrylic. And the reason I'm going to do the black acrylic is because I don't know how that liquid tape, that's what I'm trying to say, the liquid tape is going to react with whatever's on this already. I know it won't react with the acrylic. So I think what I'm going to do is paint this with the black acrylic, and then I'll go back over it with the black liquid tape, and then that'll protect everything from the heat overall. So that'll be done. Alright, so let me show you what I've been up to all week. The first thing I was up to, as you can see, I put a cover over my speaker before I wound up putting my finger through it, because I knew it was just a matter of time that was going to happen. So, as I stated at the beginning of this video, we had the resistance line cord that I needed to get rid of. And one of the things that I had to do in order to get rid of it was figure out how I was going to get the circuitry in here to run my pilot light and my two tube heaters. So I did a little research online. I also had discussions with Bob. You all know Bob. Bob Gibbons, Robert Gibbons over at Robert Gibbons. Be sure and check out his site, because the man is very wise and has a lot of good information and a lot of good videos. But I was discussing it with Bob, and we decided that the coolest, meaning temperature-wise, not, hey, cool, but the coolest way of doing this would be with a capacitor and a dropping resistor. And this was the original electrolytic. And using the calculations, we determined I could use an 8 microfarad film capacitor, which is what you see here, and a 22 ohm 5 watt resistor, which is what you see here. Now, it took quite a bit of finagling to figure out how I was fitting everything back in here, this being such a tight little radio. Of course, the one coil sits right here, so not much more room in here, and I haven't got everything back in here yet. But what I did get accomplished was I installed two terminal strips, a 4 terminal strip right here and a 3 well, that's actually 4, but I'm only using 3 terminal strip here. And the way this works, I'll show you a schematic that I drew up on my very rough. I don't do schematics. So here's our new line cord, and I come in with the line cord, and of course we go to ground, to neutral. Then I have 1.5 amp fuse, and then we go to the power switch. From the power switch, after the fuse, I go directly into my 8UF film capacitor. We also tie up here, and we go to the 32 L7 terminal 6, and we have the 05 cap. Now I don't have a safety cap, and I guess it'd help if I get you guys on screen. I haven't been able to find an 05 safety cap. In the previous project, I didn't put one in that either. So I've just got an 05 cap. Back when this was built, they didn't have safety caps. So I'm not really all that concerned, and the modern caps are so much higher quality than what the old ones were anyway. I'm not concerned about it. Plus I have the fuse anyway. So we get our normal voltage up to the 32 L7 right here. Okay, and then this is our circuit. So we have for our heaters and a pilot. So we have our 8UF film cap here. We have the bulb here, the pilot bulb. We have our 22 ohm resistor, 5 watt. The path will be through the resistor. We're in parallel here. And then we'll go into the heater circuit and the ground. So that's what I put together here. And over here you can see we've got what was the one cap, 2 caps actually in it, both 20s, and I've got them now into 22s. I've got 2 separate little 22s. I had to try and keep everything as small as possible, and even with that, this has been very difficult. As I've been putting them in, I've been of course marking everything down and circling it on my schematic, and then I moved on over to the actual schematic, and as I've been getting them in, I've been circling that stuff. So I'm not done getting all the stuff in there, but I can show you what I've got thus far. So we've got an O2 in here, we got down there, we got the 05 in here, we've got a 005 down there. I've got 2 half watt resistors in series to make up the one here, and I'll show you which one that is on the schematic in a second. Get you on screen so you can see what I'm trying to point out. I need something to point it out with. This thing's difficult to hold. Okay, so there, right in there is the 2 half watt resistors, and that's actually forms a 2400 2.4K 2400 ohm resistor here, because I didn't have a 24. I had to put 2 together in order to get the 2400. And then in this little black section here, this is 2 1 meg ohm half watt resistors in parallel to get 500K for another resistor was in here, and I'll show you these on the schematic here in a second. So, and there's our fuse. Now, I still have about 3 or 4 more caps to put in here and a couple more resistors before, and those will populate over here. The hardest part, the challenging part, has been trying to get stuff in the right order, soldered, without burning other components up. And in a chassis this tiny, that's been very difficult to do, but I've managed. I did take the volume pot and switch off and took them apart, cleaned them out, sprayed them out with deoxit, and those are fine. So that's where we're at. right at the moment. And my plan is to finish populating this section over here, and then I'll test my tubes. Hopefully they're good. I haven't tested them yet. And we'll put this thing on my dim bulb variac and see if it's going to smoke. I hope not. This has been a little struggle. It's a little bitty radio. I'm not, I have to work on a magnifier to see what I'm doing, and to get everything in there. Just things like, the soldering iron is huge compared, when you start trying to get in to solder something and you got to keep from heating something else up. So this has definitely been a learning experience. I hope after I'm all done the thing actually works, but obviously no guarantees. So I've probably got 6 or 7 hours just putting what you guys see in here. So I'm not gonna keep you watching while I struggle to put all this stuff back in here, but the plan is to go ahead and populate the rest of this schematic here. This was the 2.4K that I made up using 2 resistors, and let's see, this one right here, this was the 500K that I paralleled to put in there, and of course the other caps are there. We shall see how this pans out, and I'll bring you back when I get more done. Okay, everybody, so here's where we are with this Emerson. As you can see here, I've got the bottom of the radio pretty populated. I think I've got everything in there that needs to be in there. As you can see, everything's pretty tight. The only thing that I didn't replace is, get my pointer here, this R1 10 mega ohm quarter watt resistor. I tested it and it was like right on the money, and I decided I wasn't going to change it. I didn't have one, number one, but the fact that it was right on the money, I decided to leave it. Now, I did change both of the 500,000 ohm quarter watt resistors, R3 and R4, and the way I did it was I took 2 half watt resistors in 1 mega ohm, this is it right here, and I paralleled them and I heat shrinked them. I did it here, and then the other one is right here. And then the 2400 ohm resistor, I can see it, see, right here, that one. I put 2 1 ohm resistors in series to make the 2400 ohm resistance. That's R6 resistor. And every cap's replaced, electrolytic's replaced the one piece dual 20 with these 2 22s. And as I showed you before, I've got the 1.5 amp fuse right there. Got the detector coil back in place. Got one wire left to hook to it right here. I've got the tuning condenser back in, got my mica cleaned up. They're back in place. Got a new grommet back there where I attached it. So it's coming together. But I think this video is also starting to run long, this part 2 video. I still have to put the antenna coil in on the other side. I got to test the tubes, the 2 tubes. But I think we're going to save that for part 3. I appreciate everybody's patience with this. This has been a tight little tough little radio to get everything in that I had to put in there. And I appreciate Bob Gibbons' help. And if you're new to Greg's Vintage Workshop, please click your subscribe button if you like what you saw, and the like button. And I'm going to put a video up there on the upper left that you can watch that you might like. And I think for now we will call part 2 finished, and please tune in for part 3. And I thank you once again for watching Greg's Vintage Workshop, where I'm restoring history one piece at a time. Stay safe and healthy.